All right, welcome back to Keepin the Comics. So Storm essentially becomes a god, but at the same time, she's also in the process of dying, which makes this kind of a weird but interesting thing going on at the same time. But first, we have to talk about what leads up to this and how this series here is going to basically tie into a series that's going to be coming out in February of 2025 here, which is going to be One World Under Doom. Now that Doom is the Sorcerer Supreme. So let's actually get into it, right? So just like the other X-Men stories, this one picks up post-Krakoa. And we begin with the grand opening here of the Storm Sanctuary. And forgive me, guys, if I sound horrible right now, under the weather, so forgive me here. But what's going on here, right, is that this event is being broadcast live and reporters are buzzing with speculation right now because Storm might announce the fact that she's going to be running for Congress, especially after what she did in Oklahoma City. So what happened here in Oklahoma City is that there was some devastating shockwaves that were tearing through the entire city here, causing massive amount of destruction here. So Storm, along with her friend Frenzy, who, by the way, Frenzy is currently right now a part of the X Factor team, so you can actually see her in that ongoing series right now. And as soon as they land, another shockwave heads straight directly towards them. Now, Storm, you know, she's like, hey, I got this. And she uses her powers and she's able to actually stop the shockwave from getting into anyone here. But then under the rubble, they discovered that there was a trapped family that was there. So Frenzy, she rushes to save them while Storm holds off the shockwave. And then Storm comes on a little bit later on to come help her as well. Now, there's an interesting moment here as a Frenzy lifts more debris to rescue the other civilians. And she notices that one of them is wearing an Orcus shirt, which of course, we know how mutants feel about Orcus, but more importantly, based on the current X-Men series that are going on right now, we know that Orcus is prime and center as it pertains to like the mutant growth hormone that's going on right now, where they're manufacturing mutants. So we know that there's even more hate towards Orcus at this current moment. So Storm snaps her out of it and says, like, listen, we save everybody no matter what. And as they continue rescuing people, Frenzy shouts out to Storm that more shockwaves are coming. So Storm, she gets up for it here, but these shockwaves here, it's actually more than one at this particular time. And within that shockwave there's a branch that propels directly towards Storm and pierces her skin. But of course, Storm being the badass, right, she pulls out the branch, but she's starting to bleed heavily here. And she does use her lightning to cauterize the wound. And then Frenzy, of course, suggests, he's like, you probably should get some medical attention. But Storm insists, she's like, we do not have time for that. So Storm begins to wonder, like, what's going on with these shockwaves? So she begins to go and try to investigate as to what is causing this. So she comes across a body of water here that is completely lifeless right now. You can see the animals there. They're all basically all skeletons. The water is pretty much essentially all gone. And then looking ahead, she spots a power plant. So she's thinking to herself, okay, that this must be where all this is coming from here. But before she can get too close, another shockwave hits. Now, this time, Frenzy manages to stop it herself. Meanwhile, though, Storm, she starts to vomit. So there is a clear sign now that she has radiation poisoning. So then what Storm does is that she ends up grabbing a door here and she heads directly into the power plant. Now, as she ventures a little bit deeper, she's expecting to see like toxic spills or radiation leaks or something going on here. But when she gets to the meat of the matter, she finds a mutant child that is surrounded by dead bodies. And the child is like, I am sorry, I can't stop myself. The more I try, the worse it gets. Please, Storm, kill me. So it's clear this boy just manifested his mutant powers, which is a coming of age event, of course, that Storm has witnessed many times. So she feels empathy for this boy. She hugs him, which calms his powers and then stops the destruction. So then 3 days later, right, the public believes that the disaster was caused by the engineers at the power plant, who are working on alien kaijus, by the way. So the media is interviewing people affected by the tragedy. There's actually one woman that mentions how she's done so many different war tours, and because she's related to one of the dead engineers, that things aren't going so well for her right now. So Storm decides to call one of her Avenger friends, because now she is a part of the Avengers. Just in case you haven't caught up with that aspect of it yet, she is a part of the Avengers team right now. So she calls Iron Man and she asks him to run numbers to figure out what might have caused the situation here at the power plant. Now, Iron Man tells her, he's like, listen, I've run about 860 million calculations. I don't know if he's like, this is like hyperbole or if it's actually like legit, but he's like, I've run all of these calculations here on multiple machines using algorithms designed by Reed Richards, Forge, Riri, Shuri, etc. He's like, I reluctantly inform you that the disaster that happened here was caused by the birth of a mutant and his powers and not the engineers. Now, Storm is not surprised by this. She knew this. She was just hoping that something else was what caused it. So now she's facing a tough decision here. She's like, do I stay silent and let the mutants have this win? Or does she tell the truth to defend the honor of the deceased engineers? So then later on, back in Atlanta, well, we came from the past, right? So then we fast forward here to Atlanta, and this is where Storm is preparing to give that speech. And she starts coughing. And when she looks down at her hand, she sees the blood. So despite this, she's pushing on, but it's clear that something's wrong with her here, right? So she begins, she's like, I am Storm, mistress of the elements. Long have I been a member of the brave X-Men, and I look forward to doing great things with the mighty Avengers. As much as I adore sharing the goals and values of my comrades, I must take on my own goals, values, and identity. Declare them to the world so that the innocent may rest easy and the wicked may tremble in fear. But first, I would like to present you a haven in a day of adversity, a solace during difficult times, and a refuge in the hours of need, the Storm Sanctuary. And she continues, she's like, I want not only mutants, but humans, sorcerers, interplanetary immigrants, superhumans, gods, and everyone who calls this planet home to look up in their moments of trouble and find relief because Storm has made their skies her new home. But then she's like, however, to truly soar to great heights, I must first shed the shackles that weigh me down so heavily. She's like, the manifestation of mutant abilities is a coming of age for our kind, a beautiful treasured experience, but it can also be punishing, cruel to both the wielder, loved ones, and those we least expect. It saddens me greatly that the tragic events of Oklahoma City, and at this point here, she's revealing the truth about what happened at the power plant, that the devastating disaster that was caused by a mutant and not the engineers. As she shares these like heartfelt words, the joy among the people turns to hate, which is not surprising, right? Love, they say, morphs into fear. And the people that were present at this live broadcast that she was doing here, this live presentation, they start to leave their seats. And the mutants who are beginning to regain public favor right now they're once again becoming targets of disdain once again. But then something really interesting happens here, because beyond the planet, beyond the solar system, beyond even the universe, someone is watching her, and it's Eternity. Now, Eternity is an abstract entity here embodying the Marvel Universe, along with his sister Infinity, someone that we've seen before. And he says, I am Eternity, the beginning with no end, and I have found you worthy, Aurora Monroe, to me, my eternal Storm. Now, of course, I can't ignore the fact that this dude said to me, you know, like the to me, my X-Men. But what's intriguing here is that Eternity has chosen Storm to be his avatar right now in an upcoming fight. Now, it doesn't really say it here, but what we know based on what has been announced so far is that there's going to be an upcoming event here where we're going to have this one world under Doom, because now that Doom is the Sorcerer Supreme, he's going to be enacting his rule. But like, while that is going on, sort of kind of like adjacent to that, Eternity is going to be having his own battle here against Oblivion. Now, Oblivion is the embodiment here of the Void. So Storm is going to be Eternity's avatar in this sort of cosmic battle here. And that is what is this whole thing that Eternity is doing right now is going to lead up to. But what makes this weird is what happens next, right? Because in the meantime, like, we pick up on Storm, or after I should say, we pick up on Storm out in Lagos, Nigeria, 24 hours left, or it says 24 hours left. Now, what that means is that she has 24 hours left to live. And we know that this is because now of the radiation poisoning, which to me is a little bit confusing, because I'm thinking, like, now that she's the Eternal Storm, wouldn't this kind of nullify the poisoning? So either way, let's press on. So there's a big ship right now that is surrounding these smaller boats, and the captain warns them to stand down, but they ignore, and then they start firing. So Storm arrives looking, by the way, absolutely freaking amazing. Like, oh my gosh, she looks great here. And she stops the attackers, right? There's like this epic little moment right here where she like drop kicks this dude in the chest, and then she uses her lightning to take care of the rest of the Jamokes. So Afterwards, she lands on this big ship, but she starts coughing more intensely than she was before. Now, one crew member, right, tries to get her some water, but the captain stops him because he's like, listen, I need you, talking to Storm now, to leave immediately. Now, what he's saying here is that he doesn't want her mutant abilities to accidentally ignite their fuel or other flammable cargo that's there, especially after seeing the news from Oklahoma. So then Storm, she like takes her hand from her mouth. This one, there is way more quantity of blood that we had seen before, right? So then later on, we see a montage here of Storm at the Storm Sanctuary, and it's showing a countdown of like how many hours she has left to live. It's like 14 hours, then 13 hours, then 12, then 11, and then down to 10 hours. And in this one scene here, like while she's showering, she goes to shampoo her hair, and then like a massive chunk of it comes out. So then she goes to like this junkyard, but it actually like really isn't a junkyard at the same time. And she presents her Avengers ID to a man in order to be able to gain access or to gain entry into it. So he tells her that she can walk right through the gate, but she's like, this is locked. But he explains to her, he's like, no, this is just an illusion. So she walks through, and then she finds herself at an unknown location here in Arkansas called the Night and Day Hospital, which is a modern version here of the Night Nurse Clinic, which is a special medical facility that treats superheroes. So the doctor that walks in to see her, his name is Dr. Day. And when he sees her, he's like, oh, it's you. So then Storm is like, do I know you? But then he's like, you're an X-Men, and I do not treat X-Men. So she thinks it's because of his lack of expertise here in mutant anatomy, but he corrects her. He's like saying he knows mutant physiology well. And then she accuses him of discrimination, and he admits, he's like, yeah, I thought I made that clear, which to me was actually kind of savage. But there's actually more to the story than that, because he explains that 80% of his patients are mutants and that they treat them for free. He says it's not mutant discrimination, but it's actually X-Men discrimination. He doesn't treat X-Men. That's pretty much basically his number one rule. And he elaborates, he's like, when him and Nightmare started this hospital here, Tony Stark cut them a huge check on behalf of the Avengers and ForceWorks. And then Doctor Strange consults on behalf of the Defenders here. Reed Richards supplies medical equipment on behalf of the Fantastic Four. Danny Rand donated on behalf of the Heroes for Hire. Even Moon Knight paid cash, and everyone basically chipped in, and the X-Men did not. So then he continues, he's like, you guys conquered death on your little Krakoan island with your miracle pills. But before he could go on, like Storm, she feels the guilt at this point, right? So she says, let's settle this then, and offers him a ruby that belonged to her mother as a gift on behalf of the X-Men. And she tells him that she would like for him to have this if it means that more mutants can continue to benefit from their services here for free. So initially this catches him off guard, but he concedes. He's like, yo, I never thought that this day would come, but the X-Men are welcome here anytime. And to me, that kind of just felt a little bit too easy, but let's move on. So he starts writing some things down here without explaining. So Storm is like, yo, what's going on? You're writing quite a bit here. And that's when he tells her that she has a form of radiation syndrome. And we learn here that he's a mutant himself with the ability of medical diagnosis, and how he didn't stay on Krakoa because people without resurrection protocols needed him. He explains that there's no medical cure for the variation of radiation syndrome that she has, and he sends a referral letter here ahead of her to the doctor that will be attending to her, who is a former Sorcerer Supreme. So a lot of you guys probably already know who this is, who specializes in dark magic. How he's currently on a sabbatical, so she'll have to visit him at his secondary residence. And he warns that you better hurry because you only have 6 hours left to live at this point. So on our way there, like the irony is highlighted here that only hours ago that Storm was above or high above Nigeria, a nation known for its dark magic, the very dark magic that she now needs to save her life. How many dark spells taught in covens and dens of sorcerers can be traced back to this nation as their origin. How out of all these spells, one is most known as Ile. After fulfilling certain conditions, the word is uttered and the victim plummets to their doom. Another interpretation of Ile is trash, or better yet, ground, because as she says, what soars must one day fall. And at this moment, a giant whale like leaps out into the sky, and Storm screams, oblivion waits, as she begins to fall. We then find out that the master of dark magic that they're talking about here doesn't reside in Nigeria, not Latveria, not Dormammu's dark dimension, or any nation that you would easily consider. The sorcerer's location here is in Haiti. And then we hear him speak. He says, "You seek the assistance of a sorcerer, you descendant of Ashek. You share blood with Agamotto, the first sorcerer supreme, yet human illness dominates you in a battle to the death, unable to cast a simple defense spell. What would you do if your mutant abilities were taken from you, Aurora Monroe? Prepare yourself, goddess, for you are in the presence of the gunner of gods." And then they start to list out his titles. Some of them I can't even pronounce, so I'm not even honestly gonna try, but the Hungun Supreme, the Shaman. Ultimately here, we see Dr. Voodoo, and he says, "Hello, Storm, I will be attending to you this fine evening." Now, we haven't seen Dr. Voodoo or Brother Voodoo in a while here. As mentioned, he was once the Sorcerer Supreme back when Doctor Strange lost his position for using dark magic, the irony of that, right? And we've seen him battle, of course, with the Avengers against Dormammu. So with his knowledge here of dark magic, he's definitely the perfect person to heal Storm. But I can't help but wonder, like, if Storm is now, once again, the Avatar of Eternity here, why isn't she already healed? And why wasn't the radiation poisoning kind of nullified here? But listen, we see Dr. Voodoo in his research shrine here out in Balu, Haiti. Now, he's letting Aurora know that she is dying and that he cannot stop it. And as a necromancer, not only can he see the dead, but he can also see these creatures known as death sprites, beings that can sense when a life is close to its end, and they're circling Storm right now. We then jump back to about 4 hours earlier, and Storm is being held in this sphere by the hands of this ancient spirit. And he explains that the bargains that he's made with an ancient spirit here, not only has the spirit removed all of her radiation poisoning from her cells, but it has also cleared every illness from her body. And at this moment, Storm is literally the healthiest being in the universe, and we see what she looks like afterwards. And let me tell you, this glow up right here is absolutely phenomenal. She looks amazing right now. But here's the catch. Dr. Voodoo notices that despite her perfect health, that the largest swarm of death sprites that he's ever seen still hovers over her right now like flies over decay. So the question that he has here is like, why, if she's so healthy, does death still loom over her? And to me, this has to do with what we saw here back in issue number 1 of the series, where it's stated here where it seems as if though the universe is trying to kill Storm. So most likely this is still tied to that curse. So then Dr. Voodoo informs Storm that in exchange for her healing, that she's been charged not to use her mutant abilities for 7 days. So then Storm's reaction is like, listen, I'm sure that's a price that you welcome, right? But then Dr. Voodoo clarifies that her other options were actually far much worse, and how the spirit demanded either 7 decades shaved off of her lifespan, the removal of 7 of her organs, or the darkest option, which was the Egon grave, meaning that she would lose her memory, including the memory of how to breathe, for 7 months. So Storm hearing this is like, yeah, I'm good with the mutant powers being lost here for 7 days. No big deal, I've done this before. And Dr. Voodoo here, he acknowledges that she's deadly enough, of course, with just her fists and her knives, but he strongly suggests that she join him at Strange Academy and come under the protection of his students and their headmaster. So no sooner when Dr. Voodoo mentions the headmaster that this dude appears, and taken aback, he's like, yo, so many death sprites. So then Dr. Voodoo apologizes for his brother's outbursts here, but Storm is like, listen, it's fine, and how she appreciates the offer to stay at Strange Academy, but not even the threat of certain death can keep her from reaching her next destination. So then later on, we find the uncanny X-Men here, Wolverine, Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Gambit. And Wolverine, he catches a scent. One that he mentions is Nimrod's scent of all things, and then he starts popping his claws, preparing to go investigate the house. So then Rogue questions, she's like, whether or not he's actually sure that this is Nimrod. But Wolverine is like, listen, you can keep doubting, but I'm going to get to carving. So then Nightcrawler, he pops up top, but he's like, listen, I can't see anything through the windows. So then Gambit notes that Jubilee and the kids, because Rogue was concerned, that they are sleeping. So Rogue, she gets a little panicky here, and then she rushes in, smashing down the door, yelling, "Get away from those kids." And then inside, to her surprise, it's Storm that she finds. Turns out that Nightcrawler, Gambit, and Wolverine were all in on this surprise for Rogue. Now, catch this real quick here. When Storm sees Wolverine, she gives him a sweet little kiss here on the cheek. And let's remember that for a little bit later on. Now, it's a nice little reunion here for the team who haven't seen Storm since she was on that live broadcast explaining what happened in Oklahoma City, where a newly awakened mutant power caused massive casualties, which is also when Storm got the radiation poisoning. Now, we covered that here back in the last video that we did on the Storm series, so go check that out if you want to catch up on that and then more in the series. So Storm ends up staying here for a few days, right? Since she can't use her powers, she starts to train in combat. Now, on day 2, without her powers, while sparring with Wolverine, he goes a little bit easy on her here. But then by day 3, Storm is starting to step up her game, forcing Wolverine to get a little bit more aggressive. He manages at one point right here to suplex her, and then later on, she counters with a triangle chokehold. But on day 5, things really start to heat up a little bit here, literally and figuratively. Now, the rain is falling right now. Lightning is flashing in the background, which is a nice symbolic touch because, of course, she cannot use her powers. Now, Wolverine gets cocky. He's telling Storm, do not get up after he knocks her down, and that this isn't training anymore, but a beatdown. And then he starts to drop his classic line, "I'm the best that there is at what I do, and what I do." But before this dude could finish, Storm lets out a warrior scream and then charges at him and spears him to the ground. And then she reminds him that she always gets up, and out of all people, he should know that. So she goes to give him that finishing blow, but then she stops, and instead we get a passionate, intimate moment. And let's just say here that their wrestling session ends with a different kind of hold. Call it the tongue hold. Listen, don't judge me. I'm still kind of workshopping that phrase, all right? This is a nice little payoff here to what we've seen before with Storm and Wolverine hooking up, although it's of course been in different timelines and universes, but once again, nice little touch here for the fans. Now, a few hours later, right? Day 6 without powers now, Storm and Wolverine are lying in bed when a bird with some huge eyes appears. Now, apparently this is one of Doom's messengers here, and it calls out to Storm by name, telling her that she's been summoned by God Emperor Doom, ruler of Latveria, sorcerer supreme, and soon to be conqueror of Earth, and how he wants to parlay with her on mutant matters, an honor that he rarely bestows. And Storm's reaction is basically like, okay, like I guess like third time's the charm. The bird says, "Tonight I bid you farewell, mutant champion." But then Storm stops her because he's trying to address the bird, asking if it can take her to Latveria since she cannot use her mutant powers, and how she has no Latveria visa, which I'm not gonna lie, made me chuckle a little bit here. Now, the bird is reluctant because it doesn't want to be treated like a lowly steed, but eventually agrees to delay departure, giving Storm some time to prepare. So then we switch over here to some girl talk, right? Because Rogue finds out that Storm knocked boots with Wolverine, and she's all excited. But Storm tries to hush her, and she's like, listen, I'm not necessarily proud of this here. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing. But right now, what Storm needs is a dress and concealable weapons, since all of her gear is back in Atlanta and she has to go to Latveria. So Rogue offers to help, but she's worried about Storm heading off to meet Doom without her powers. So Storm reassures her that Victor Von Doom is harmless. Well, kind of, right? Rogue points out that Doom has a thing for powerful women named Storm, and now she's concerned that that infatuation is gone now. and how Storm might be in danger. So Storm reasons that Doom wants to talk world domination and mutant affairs, and as an Avenger, she should at least hear him out, and how he's a new Sorcerer Supreme after all, and how they know very little about this new Doom. So soon enough, a little bit later on here, Storm sets off with this giant bird, and it's one of the most hilarious sights I've seen so far. It just looks really funny. And Storm here, the mighty mutant, is riding this bird because she can't use her powers, and she whispers, "I'm sorry, Logan," as she departs off. But then in this moment, the Death Sprites, they reappear here because this entire time that Storm has been here, while she's been going through this training, we haven't seen the Death Sprites. It would seem as if though they know that danger lies ahead. And based on what we know about Doom and what we discussed here in the last issue about Eternity and Oblivion, that some ish is about to pop off. Now, on a sad note though, when we see Wolverine again, he asks for Storm, right? Knowing that she was already gone. And you can't help but feeling sorry for the guy here. Like, will this man ever find true love? But then after that, we see God Emperor Sorcerer Supreme Doom sitting and waiting with the words that say, "What fate must await Storm in the den of the terrifying God Emperor Doom?"
So Storm has been dealing with a deadly curse. Yeah, the universe itself is out to kill her. She recently turned to Dr. Voodoo for help after suffering radiation poisoning. Now, a spirit healed her, but of course there was a catch. Storm can't use her mutant powers for 7 days. That's no powers for a week when the universe wants you dead. Crazy, right? During this powerless stretch, she's been putting in work, training with the X-Men and reconnecting with Wolverine. But then, out of nowhere, she gets summoned by God Emperor Doom. Yep, Dr. Doom himself, who also happens to be the Sorcerer Supreme, to discuss some mutant matters. Sounds civil, but we know Doom. The man sets up a lavish dinner for Storm, but when she doesn't respond the way he expected, what does he do? Threatens to kill the chef. Classic Doom move. But Storm being Storm, she wasn't having it. She instantly uses her powers despite knowing the cost. And that's when the spirit, Egan, stepped in, taking her life. So yeah, you can say Dr. Doom indirectly killed Storm. But here's the wildest part. That single act, it was all Eternity needed to name Storm his heir. You heard right. Storm's gone from goddess to something even greater. Now this situation with Storm right now, she's kind of like Phoenix and Jean Grey, where sometime it's Jean, other time Phoenix is in full control. So we're gonna call her Eternal Storm. And currently she's still in Latveria right now. And she's dealing with this spirit, Egan, who you can see he's pleading for his life. He says, "Please, I saved your life." And Eternal Storm says, "My host body's life, not mine, and you took it back. Fret not, Egan. You are a spirit. You will never truly die. But under colossal atmospheric pressure, you will take the form that I can easily consume." And you can clearly see he's been put into a jawbreaker, basically, and swallowed whole. And then Eternal Storm swoops down. And this is a badass scene. And she says, "Now you." And Doom says, "No, you were the one in danger here. You brought a demon to my nation, demolished my abode, and endangered my people in your reckless brawl with said demon. Leave my nation at once, or face the wrath of Doom." And man, I gotta say, yo, her glow up is so phenomenal. Every time we keep seeing Storm, she keep getting hotter and hotter. Now, before I get too into this whole fight that's about to happen between Storm and Dr. Doom, I gotta just give you a little history that's been going on for about 3 billion years. Because we get a shot of Eternity, Oblivion, and the Living Tribunal. And you know, anytime these three are together, there's definitely mayhem going on. And just in case you don't know, very few beings are as crucial or as powerful as these three. These cosmic entities aren't just characters. They represent the fundamental forces that keep reality itself in balance. Eternity, the living embodiment of the entire universe, first appeared in Strange Tales issue 138. Eternity represents all of existence, every star, planet, dimension, and even time itself. When the universe faces threats that can shatter reality, characters like Doctor Strange turn to Eternity for guidance. He's not just a powerful being, he is the universe. Eternity's counterpart is Infinity, who represents the vastness of space. Together, they maintain the flow of time and space, ensuring everything runs as it should. However, for every force of existence, there must be balance. And that's where Oblivion comes in. See, Oblivion is the complete opposite of Eternity. While Eternity embodies all that is, Oblivion represents all that isn't, the void of non-existence. Making his debut in Iceman issue number 1, Oblivion is the inevitable end, the silence after the universe's song. But don't confuse him with the villain. Oblivion isn't evil. He simply is the counterweight to ensure not everything lasts forever. Without endings, there could be no beginnings. Oblivion often acts through avatars like Maelstrom, who in Quasar issue 25 tries to bring everything back into the void. But when the balance between these cosmic foes threatens the multiverse itself, there's only one being who can judge: the Living Tribunal. Now, the Living Tribunal was introduced in Strange Tales issue 157. Now, he is the ultimate arbiter of cosmic justice, with 3 faces: equity, vengeance, and necessity. The Tribunal ensures no single universe gains too much power, risking the stability of the entire multiverse. The Living Tribunal's authority is so absolute that even Eternity and Oblivion must respect its rulings. In Infinity Gauntlet, issue number 6, despite the universe teetering on the brink under Thanos' control, the Tribunal refuses to intervene because the cosmic balance wasn't truly broken. However, when the Tribunal does act, it can reshape entire realities. Its fall, as seen in the New Avengers issue number 30, sends shockwaves across the multiverse, signaling a catastrophic shift in the cosmic order. Together, Eternity, Oblivion, and the Living Tribunal represent the core forces of the Marvel's cosmic narrative: existence, non-existence, and the judgment that keeps them in check. Without them, the Marvel Universe wouldn't just fall apart, it would cease to matter. Now here's another cool fact. Eternity and Oblivion have been fighting for ages, for eons. And if you look at all those skulls that are on Oblivion's waist, those are actually the skulls of all the heirs that he's defeated during these battles. But they usually ended swiftly and with a beheading, just like Eternal Storm tried to do to Doctor Doom. But unfortunately for her, he was 2 steps ahead. He said none could defeat Doom. And Eternal Storm says, "Before your planet, your sun, your moon, I was. Yet, I have known defeat. You will learn humility by my hands." And hold up a minute. We have Doctor Dooms being electrocuted, frozen. There's multiplying Doctor Dooms everywhere. This is crazy. And all in the meanwhile, the real Doctor Doom is still eating his dinner. And as Eternal Storm barges in, Doctor Doom says, "If you expect me to beg and grovel, then you have surely mistaken whose presence you're in. If you expect me to be afraid of you, then you do not know whose body you have taken possession of. Aurora Monroe will not allow you to take the life of an unarmed man. She will reassert herself if you try." And all of a sudden, Eternal Storm's hands start shaking, trembling. Eternal Storm says, "You seem to know my host a great deal. Very well, Victor Von Doom. It seems you have escaped certain death." And Doom replies, "It is death who evades my wrath." And it seems like these cosmic entities are at it again. Oblivion states, "I have been without Death's presence for 3 eons. My existence has been colder, incomplete, and lonelier without her troubles. I want my sister back." And Eternity says, "By all means, you can have Death back. I am nothing if not reasonable." Oblivion questions, "I can have her back? You greedy robber? And can I just say this snake form is friggin' awesome?" And he continues, "Where in the Oblivion void will I now house my precious sister? Where in my realm hasn't your insatiable self spread to? All you do is take and take, yet internally hunger for more. And as Oblivion squeezes him, Eternity says, "It is not what I do, Oblivion. It is not who I am." And Eternity says, "Then existence would be better without you in it. I move for Eternity's end, the collapse of the universe, so that I might reunite with my sister once again, so I might have enough room to contain her once more." And the friggin' Tribunal comes out of nowhere and smashes his hammer right across Oblivion's face and says, "The will of the one above all is for the primordials to always be. Who are you to question that will and move to the end of eternity? Who are you? Motion denied. And your right to convene another trial is permanently revoked. You shall forever spend all of your existence separated from your twin." And then it happened. Even though all four of the primordials, Eternity, Affinity, Oblivion, and Death would deny any such thing happening, the one above all, from their realm on high, saw it all. The living Tribunal saw it as well. The prideful Oblivion shed a tear for his sister. The one above all was moved. This even shook Asgard. The eternity of existence trembled. It even made Phoenix call out for Aurora. And then the living Tribunal said, "Motion carried. A trial by combat shall be held. Oblivion versus Eternity. To the victor, there waits limitless eons of unbound sovereignty and freedom to house Affinity, Death, and whatsoever they so choose. But the defeated shall be hammered into a speck, uninhabitable to even an atom or thought. Eternity, who shall be your champion and fight on your behalf? Who shall aid the universe? Whose valor do you trust to deliver you from oblivion?" And what do we get? We get a picture of Storm around a bunch of hippos crying. Now, Storm's abode in Atlanta is a home during times of peace, in days of trials and tribulations. It's a sanctuary. It's a space for all, including a safe space for former X-Men like Maggot. And I never was a fan of his. I don't know about you guys. But still, this is not a time of peace. Storm says, "I know most people tend to have their heads buried in their phones and all, but I'm still pretty sure they'll notice us leave, despite the cloud cover. Because you thought in the middle of the night, people weren't gonna notice 5 glowing red circles taking off. But this sanctuary transforms into a battleship of great destructive power, known simply as Thundercloud. And we get a glimpse of Storm gearing up, and we already know what's about to go down. She says they will send men after me, very bad men. They will be armed to the teeth with weapons made to hurt me. And that staff she grabs is incredible. And why would people be after her? Well, 10 hours ago, Charles Xavier broke out of prison and was in her kitchen. Now, let me slow it down a little bit for you guys who have not been keeping up with everything going on, because there are a million different issues going on with X-Men right now. So look, let's talk about why Charles Xavier went from mutant savior to the most wanted fugitive. So first up, he made a shady deal with Orcus. Yeah, those anti-mutant psychos. That deal led to an Earth shuttle exploding and killing people. Now, before you freak out, turns out those people were technically already dead. Long story, but still not a good look. And then came the Hellfire Gala disaster. Xavier, under pressure, forced mutants through Krakoan portals, sending them off-world just to keep human government happy. Yeah, that didn't sit right with a lot of people either. And because bad decisions love company, he got locked up in Grey Moken, the old Xavier Institute, now a mutant prison, thanks to Dr. Karina Ellis. But surprise, surprise, Professor X doesn't stay behind bars for long. Now, he's on the run and asking Storm for help. For what? I'll get to that in a few moments. So, Storm's cooking him this meal while they're chatting. And Xavier's like, "I don't have to use my telepathic gifts to know that you have not truly informed the Avengers of my whereabouts. Not yet." And she replies, "Do you also know why I have gone to all this trouble to make you a warm meal? According to the Avengers database, 95% of the escaped mutant convicts are killed during their manhunt set to retrieve them. Chances are, this may be your last meal. There are no more resurrections, Professor. The dead stay dead. So if I were you, I would get to talking. Why have you really come here? And Xavier says, would you believe me if I told you that I want to bring a piece of old magic back? A magic we lost in our unified dreams when we were forced to awake to harsh realities? I want to raise the dead one more time. And I don't know about anyone else, but I'm a firm believer that Xavier is always thinking about himself and playing some sort of game. So I don't trust this man. But needless to say, we are back in current time in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. And someone says, that's close enough. We don't want to trigger that thing's proximity alert. We'll be going in by portal. And we get this dope shot of these three ready to go. Because Storm, Maggot, and Xavier are certain that men equipped with weapons built to cause them unimaginable pain will be let loose on the manhunt. Storm says Maggot, and he says hold your horses. Daddy's gotta look good for the guests. And if I say how I really feel about Storm in this armor, I might get banned from YouTube. But needless to say, Maggot says, if they ain't human, we're eating them too. But those who were after Xavier knew him quite intimately. For whom better to hurt him a great deal than family? And Scott says, stand down, Storm. The professor is coming with the X-Men. And yo, every time they come through a portal, it is a clean shot. I swear they rehearse it. Needless to say, Storm says no. And Scott says, I know he's probably giving you some sad story, but you should know this more than anyone else here. That is what he does. He uses people. And the most effective tool is not his telepathy, but his greater good. And Storm says, don't make me do this, Cyclops. Go home. And he says, if there's going to be any hope of peaceful coexistence with humans and among us, we need to be as accountable as the people we demand it from. The professor is no exception. We're taking him back to Grey Mulkin prison. And Storm says, a day will come when you would desire such an exception, Scott. You would bless the heavens on that day that I am who I am. And come that day, I would put my life on the line for you. But today, this man is under my protection. And Scott says, we don't back down, Storm. And Storm says, I understand. Give it your all, brother. And Scott starts giving commands right away. Kid Omega, shield us from Xavier's telepathy and keep him busy. Juggernaut, Maggot's all yours. Psylocke and I will retrieve the professor and withdraw. Storm can't unleash her full strength without destroying her base of operation. So Temper and Magic, give her hell. And in the midst of all this, why does Charles Xavier look like he just entered the meanest disco battle ever? But needless to say, man, this battle's intense. First of all, Temper trying to use any elemental powers against Storm is automatically a bad matchup. Okay, we got Cyclops and Psylocke over here. Dang, that's a tongue twister. Distracting Maggot. And it looks like Storm is dealing with Temper and Magic all on her own. And as Juggernaut pins Maggot to the ground, we see Storm and Cyclops going at it. Storm is like, you've assembled no truly dangerous weapons. You failed to alter the battlegrounds in your favor. And Cyclops says, you've set no traps. Nothing but heart and goodwill. Shatter. And my man let loose a Goku beam on Storm. But don't sleep, because she said very well, watch and learn, my child. And she simply let loose a breath and said, it's my turn now. You fought well, brave mutant. And I don't know if you noticed, but that's now Eternal Storm fighting. Even the arm is disappearing, and that goddess outfit that she wears is emerging. And continues to say, make peace with your existence, Scott Summer, leader of the X-Men, and continues to beam this man dead in his eyes. Even Xavier says, oh, Scott, what have I done? Kid Omega says Summers. Juggernaut is bugging out and yells, Cyclops. And we just see a frozen Cyclops on the ground. Juggernaut completely loses it, rips off Maggot's arms, and says the gloves are off. I'm going to beat you to a bloody pulp and smear you against the pavement, Storm. And Eternal Storm says, you think you scare me? I've seen Oblivion rip out the hearts of beings that could collapse stars into quasars like it was nothing. Compared to my brother, you were all weak. And then Eternal Storm starts to puke something up. And if you remember from my last video, then you already know what's going on. Because she says, eat up. It is the compressed essence of Agun, a creature so fierce, even your Sorcerer Supreme found it impossible to defeat. She tells them to eat up and heal. Eat up and become my Omega Maggot. And this whole time, Juggernaut has been getting blown by wind. Eternal Storm says, you still resist my strong winds. And Juggernaut says, nothing can stop the Juggernaut. And Eternal Storm replies, why don't we test that theory? And she has this man elevated by the wind while getting stabbed repeatedly with electric versions of that staff she was holding earlier. And then she stabs him into the ground and breaks his helmet. Now the X-Men are grounded. So while Temper's trying to defrost Scott's eyes, she says, I don't think that was Storm in there. And Kid Omega's like, don't, not now. And Psylocke is talking to someone and says, have you found it? And it seems she's talking to Beast. And he says, what state is Cyclops in? Maybe I can offer some help and medical. And she repeats, have you found the engine room, Beast? And he says, yes, I found the Storm engine. She says, blow it up. Don't mess with the X-Men. But before Beast can do anything, Xavier walks in calling his name, Beast. Now look, we have two bodies on the floor. And who do we see coming in the distance? The Silver Surfer, who says, you have fought well. Please allow me to borrow your weapon, to borrow your strength, and add it to mine. And boy, does he get a badass makeover and upgrade. I mean, imbued with both the power cosmic and the fiery fury of Surtur's Twilight Sword, Norrin Radd is one of the most powerful beings in the universe. He has the strength to rip through a black hole cluster, the stamina to battle against a pantheon of gods for thousands of years, and the ability to traverse the vacuum of deep space at the speeds faster than light. More durable than Diamond, but nevertheless remarkably endowed with self-restoration. Yet this being, whose presence alone strikes fear into the hearts of trillions, answers to an even greater power, Galactus, the devourer of worlds. But even the cosmic ravager known as Galactus answers to another, the universe plague, the Black Winter, the devourer of realms, the Rot Storm, Ender. Enders before they can reach our universe must pass through the Oblivion Void. Many Enders who have dared try have met their swift ends instead at the hands of the most powerful of the primortals, Oblivion. Oblivion, the always been, the always will be. Oblivion, the fearsome cosmic leviathan. But look, back on Earth, Storm risks a swift end as well, as she faces a fearsome serpent on her own, a green anaconda, surging with the maddening effects of tainted super soldier serum, and it hungers for mutant flesh. Like, bro, you got a crazy anaconda who's out here being Captain America? This is friggin' nuts. But anyway, Captain Anaconda, yes, I should trademark that. He goes in to bite Storm, and Maggot comes out of nowhere with a swift punch. You're not exactly who I was planning on picking up tonight, mate. And I can't even lie, I kinda like this whole upgraded look with him. But needless to say, the Anaconda trips him, and Storm tells him to pace himself. He's still recovering from his fight with Juggernaut. The Anaconda tries to escape in the river, and Storm's like, I will chase down the beast. And that she does. She says, we do not have time for this, creature. You're cold-blooded. Go to sleep already. And you can tell by her facial expressions, she is ticked off. But let's stop right here and go back 7 days and let's just discuss how we even got to this point. Because Iron Man is sitting on her couch and she's coming down the stairs and Iron Man says, you need a better security system, Aurora. And she claps back and says, you need to stop sneaking lady friends into my sanctuary to show off my baby hippos. Iron Man, fellow Avenger or not. And he says, didn't think you knew about that. She goes, it is my house. Mind you, you can tell she has the attitude because she's doing that clap. I'm not even going to get into it. We all know that clap. But Tony then says, it's not that. It's, you don't do well with secrets. I didn't think you would learn I snuck into your home and not do anything about it. And she says, I'm going back to bed, Tony. And yes, I have a real mattress. I don't just float in the air while I sleep. And this fool says, that's not what T'Challa told us. Like, bro. But you can tell she's aggravated at this point. She says, it's too early in the morning for these mind games. The last time I asked you for assistance on a mission, I gave a press release about our findings. You need my assistance now, but you're worried I will do the same thing. You want to know where I stand with keeping secrets. And Tony says, this is where you tell me where you stand with them. And she goes, does it matter? I can perceive the cosmic dust radiating off of you. I presume you've tried and failed to locate Thor. I'm your last hope. And Tony says, this isn't an Avengers mission. I can't even tell you who the mission is for. So I swear, if this gets out, I'm publishing your browsing history. And if it's not scandalous enough, I'll add some maggots into the mix. Like, bro, did you just bribe to release her computer history and add someone else's? But look, Tony says I need you in Brazil. For reasons I can't share with you. We're working with a group of mad scientists there to recreate the super soldier serum that created Captain America. The samples were lost during transit, a weather anomaly. We also lost a good man to the Amazon rainforest. We need to retrieve his remains for his family. We need to recover the samples of the serum before they fall into the wrong hands. And for some reason, I don't think they fell into the wrong hands. They fell into the wrong snake. But that's a different story. And bro, we can just see the mayhem of this storm. As he says, and we need the weather anomaly in Brazil investigated and taken care of. We've tried everything except a storm god. Now look, we are back in present time and you can tell she done fried the snake and you can still see the body inside she was supposed to retrieve. Maggot goes, you cremated the whole damn snake. Fetching the pilot's undigested cadaver for his family to bury was a major reason we took the damn job. It was a priority. And Storm just says, you kept up with my speed, yet you're not out of breath, nor is your heart rate elevated. And he goes, what does that have to do with the mission going teats up? And she goes, the creature burned to ash in an instant, but it was not my doing. Someone is here. And who do we see? Mama again. And if you guys don't know, he's the god of lightning in Australian mythology. And can I just add on, that lizard looks badass as it's releasing some smoke. And Storm says, all the air molecules around us have been replaced with solely oxygen molecules. And you can see someone's coming from the background, lightning coming from their teeth. And it's Sango, the god of thunder, lightning, and justice from Yoruba mythology. And boy, does this look badass. He blows a huge cloud of thunder out of his mouth, and Storm matches the same energy. But just then, someone else comes out of nowhere with a glowing sword and says, thanks for the opening, Brother Sango. And it's Susanoo. You know, the god of storms and seas out of Japanese mythology. Like, bro, this is getting crazy. We have 3 actual gods here attacking Storm and Maggot. Maggot goes to punch Susanoo, and my boy teleported with the swiftness. And I think he only got saved because Storm came in with some wind, because that boy was about to get sliced. But needless to say, my man's clapped his hands together and said, thunderclap. And all of a sudden, Maggot went flying. Storm said, brace yourself. I'm getting you out of here. And she sent them flying in different directions. Storm says, you know what to do. And just when you thought things couldn't get any crazier, here comes Chak, the god of rain, thunder, and lightning from Mayan mythology. And he says, I am sorry, young one. And then a voice says, when you were a self-proclaimed storm god, what do you do when the real ones come for you? And at the same time, Chak grabs Storm by the hair out of nowhere. And he says, a storm god who retreats? Shameful. And he smashes her head first into the water and screams, God slam. And as Storm's there in tears, she remembers Dr. Voodoo saying, you, descendant of Ashake, you share blood with Agamotto, the first sorcerer supreme. What would you do if your mutant abilities were taken from you? And oh man, those eyes turn black, and all of a sudden, there's this crazy octopus-looking creature that grabs all the gods. And at the same time, her hair is still being pulled. And out the corner of her eyes, she sees Mama again coming in for a charge. She quickly reaches out for Susanoo's sword, and she cuts her own hair off while saying, "From today on, sleep with your eyes wide open." And she heads back to the sanctuary in Brazil, and you can see she is pissed but looking badass. She tells Maggot, "Call Iron Man. Tell him his weather anomaly will soon come to an end. Tell him I will bring him the remains of the pilot, even if I have to sieve through every flake of ash in that jungle. And fetch me my armor and blade. I'm going god hunting." And someone says, "Storm gods in their fury." And it's friggin' Thor, who continues by saying, "But Thor must say, thee nay." Now this starts off with Storm and her battle armor, and she says, "I am Storm, mistress of the elements. Ever since I was a child, you have spoken to me like a mother, whispered sweet words into the ears of her weeping little one. I am grown now, mother. I am a child no longer. These storm gods have hurt you, but by my power, I make you whole again." And we cut over to Brazil, where we see Black Panther and Tony having a talk. And Tony says, "She did it. Don't worry, T'Challa. I'm sure your anti-cloud seeding cannon did something too." Black Panther's like, "Look, we worked on the cannon together, Tony. It was your idea to use," and Tony cuts him off. "Is it really my idea if it doesn't work? Wanna go say hi to Storm?" Black Panther's like, perhaps another time. I'm in a hurry. I have a great evening planned with Emma Frost." And Tony says, "Touche." But we jump back to the Amazon rainforest, where Storm is finishing her actual mission. She says, "The cremated remains of the pilot and the Devourer. Dr. Voodoo, as a necromancer, should be able to distinguish the remains so the pilot can be laid to rest with his family." And Thor is like, "Aurora, whatever thou does to prepare Midgard, do it quickly. For in my travels, I have learned a great deal about our kind. Before Zeus, before any of the storm gods, there was another." Now really quick, if you want to support the channel and get early access, behind the scenes stuff, or just help us keep this going, you can join the Keepin' It Comic fam right here on YouTube with our membership group by hitting the join button. Or you can go over to our Patreon, links in the description. It means a lot, and it helps us keep bringing you these breakdowns every week. We really appreciate it, but let's get back to it. And we get a flashback to the dimension of manifestations 1 billion years ago. Hadad, the first, he grew so mighty that he wove eternity into his cloak and forged death into his war club. The Phoenix Force was his armor, and Infinity was his shield. By then, none could defeat him but one, the one above all. And in the far reaches of the universe, the near future, Hadad will return in the days to come, and with him, a horde of rot storms. And we see Silver Surfer battling someone, and he says, "Rock Blizzard, spew Galactus out." But Thor, he continues with his warning. He says a civil war brews across pantheons. Storm gods against storm gods. A thunder war. Those who seek to stop Hadad and those who seek to hasten his return rage against one another. The storm guards who attacked you, I don't know which faction they belong to, but I am certain they will be back when you least expect them to. But when they do, armor up, unsheath your blade, summon me with this, and together we shall make them rue the day that they made an enemy of Aurora Monroe. And she's like, "Nah, I'm good. Thank you, Thor. But when next I meet my attackers, they will be the ones who will need to summon for help." But 3 days later, at the Storm Sanctuary, the warrior our universe has chosen to fight, and its steed trembles and cold sweats, not for the battle to come against Oblivion. She fears not the looming threat of the Thunder War, but at the summon of her nation's government. Aurora Monroe, the goddess shudders, like sharks to blood, like bees to sweet nectar. The government only beckons when a grave error has been made and the day for reckoning is due. After all, the greatest weakness of the spectacular is the bureaucracy. And we skip over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation headquarters, where Storm has just come through a portal. And who's that in the yellow, you might think? Well, That's none other than Manifold, whose real name is Eden Fessy. He's not your average teleporter either. He bends space itself to move people anywhere in the universe. He says, I have a bad feeling about this storm. And she responds, where's your sense of optimism? And he says, if you change your mind, just give the word, and we'll have an army standing with you. Say the word, and we'll kindle a second Krakoan age, one that is not announced by the whisper into the mind of humanity, but won by deafening thunder. And she says, they will have to work harder than this if that is their goal, because every inch of this nation, of this planet, is as much as ours as it is theirs. We are here to stay. And we get a glimpse of two guys in suits. The one on the left? Well, that's not a villain from Doom Patrol. That's one of Orcus's twisted creations. A walking science experiment with a fetus for a face, probably running on pure biotech and bad vibes. And the other one is your typical Orcus goon. High-tech muzzle, low creep vibes, probably takes orders from Nimrod and thinks genocide is a science policy. But anyway, Storm says keep the sanctuary safe while I'm away, Eden. And make sure Maggot stays out of trouble. And man, he's already starting trouble. He's in the middle of, I guess you would call it a ring for this place, and a whole crowd of people watching him while he's being introduced. The announcer says, in the black corner, weighing in at a beep ton of pounds, wearing the coolest, coldest costume on this side of the universe, the unstoppable devourer, the blue-skinned Zulu Titan of destruction, jacked up the Ripper, Maggot. And you can see he is failing this intro. Eden's like, what the? I wasn't even going for a minute. Storm is gonna kill me. And this guy says something in scribble. And he's like, I hear you, Master. But if this is Maggot's way of facing his fears and preparing for the battle to come, he might die before the real battle begins. And it looks like he is about to be in a serious free-for-all with a Gentle, She-Hulk, Juggernaut, Big Bertha, Strong Guy, Armor, and Abomination. Man, I'd love to be there for that fight. But while Maggot has often wrestled with restraint, Storm's struggle with claustrophobia has been a tale as old as time. Storm is the host of the physical embodiment of our universe. Her need for space and dreading the lack of it is expected, if not predictable. Interrogation rooms thrive on this fare, with walls that close in on hope and a sense of judgment. But not this one. This room was designed to make rural feel small, minuscule, inconsequential. And then we get this alien-looking creature that says, hello, my name is Special Agent for B. I would like to ask you some questions. Behind the two-way mirror, we have an independent observer from the Office of National Emergency, Agent Ludfisk. And I'm sorry if I butchered that name, but that's a little difficult for me. But anyway, he says, but I'm sure you can already sense him with your powers. Remember, at any point during the questioning, the Fifth Amendment is always available to you. So do not feel pressured to give me an answer at all times. If I stood the risk of 5-year sentence in a supervillain correctional facility, I would choose my words carefully too. However, your answers or lack of thereof will be considered during the course of our investigation. Hold up, didn't you just say she should use the Fifth Amendment and probably not say stuff and it wouldn't be used against her? But then you went and said that not answering would be used against her too. Yeah, sounds like a typical lawyer. But he says, lastly, I'm originally from a planet with more nitrogen-rich atmosphere. So pardon me if I sometimes inhale from my nitrogen tank while we discuss. Shall we begin? And someone should probably tell him you can't smoke or vape in a government building. But he says, what are your emission policies for the Storm Sanctuary? She responds, the Storm Sanctuary was built by basically Tony, Moon Girl, and Shuri to emit no greenhouse gases. I have the certifications issued by S.H.I.E.L.D. here as proof. The hover thrusters during the day also emit a light identical to solar rays, so we never impede anyone's access to sunlight. We've seen far too much of how poorly the powerful and the wealthy treat the masses. We continually do our best to not make the same mistakes. He skips right to the chase. He says, Are you a fugitive? You are famously a former thief on the streets of Cairo. You wear it like a badge of honor. So I ask you, have you faced punishment for your past crimes? Do you see the need to submit yourself to the working legal system? Storm sighs. She says, I'm happy to provide you with answers. However, my relationship with the Egyptian criminal justice system is not the prerogative of the United States. He says, I can play that game. I would need a report of your activities within the last 6 weeks. She says, the Impossible City reports and files my missions with the Avengers, but I did bring over full reports of my solo undertakings. He says, this is very impressive. Carrying out this many heroic missions within 6 weeks, the lives you have saved will be internally grateful. However, I would like to know more about the activities where you were not the hero, but the victim. And I'm not talking about your recent visit to Doomstadt. You've made it abundantly clear that whatever happens outside of this country is beyond our jurisdiction. So let's start off easy. Have you been kidnapped within the last 6 weeks while you were in the United States of America? She says no. He says, we feared you would say that. We believed you were recently under psychic influence, and your memories of the event may have been telepathically altered. She responds, I'm immune to telepathy. We long discovered my friends Gambit and Jubilee are immune to telepathy because of the latent energy that's always surging through their bodies and brains. I endeavor to always maintain the same to keep myself immune from the telepathic control. He responds, do I have your permission to examine this hypothesis of yours? He takes her hand as she says, you may. He walks away then saying, I'm sorry for taking so much of your time. The telepathy simulation machine is right next door. The procedure would only take 5 minutes. And Storm stands up pissed. This isn't real. He says, excuse me? She responds, this isn't real. This moment, after you held my hand, it isn't real. Greater beings have tried to invade my mind and failed. And Bro puts one hand up and sends her crashing into the wall while laughing. He says, so you harbored the fugitive Charles Xavier and assisted his escape off-world of your own free will? What did you think was going to happen? The streets of Cairo all over again? There were consequences for one's actions in the adult world, in America, in my America. And just then, 3 of these goons barge in right behind her as he pulls a gun out. Aurora Moreau, you were under arrest for the obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law.
So we pick back up on Storm at the Federal Bureau here in Washington, D.C., and she finally takes up the officer here on that one call that she has. Now, who does she call? The office of Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, who, by the way, is not there. So Storm says to the officer, Jennifer Walters is exceptionally professional and dedicated to upholding the sanctity of the law. If I can't reach her, she must be preoccupied with some important legal matters. Well, not quite, because apparently Jennifer is over at the Storm Sanctuary right now in Atlanta, having a very friendly, competitive match here with Strong Guy, with Blue Marvel refereeing, by the way. Listen, y'all gotta stop treating my guy Blue Marvel like this, okay? But then we get this narration that says, a power shifter is often an unremarkable being who has suffered through mutations, dangerous scientific experimentations, or a magical encounter. A traumatic experience that has now linked this individual to an immeasurable energy source. At their command, this colossal energy courses through their body, causing them to increase in mass and size, making their bone and muscle density exponentially skyrocket and granting them unimaginable physical capabilities, enough for them to wrestle with gods. And it's in that moment when She-Hulk gets up and punches Strong Guy straight into his face. Damn near went through his face, if I might add. And that here is what gives us the series of matches that ensues after this. She-Hulk versus Strong Guy, winner She-Hulk. Then we get Abomination versus Juggernaut, winner being Juggernaut. Then we get Big Bertha versus Armor, the winner being Big Bertha, and then Gentle versus Omega Maggot, with the winner being Omega Maggot. But then we jump back to Storm, who is about to be interrogated here by Fabii, who we met back here in the last issue. Now, Fabii here is an FBI agent from an alien planet with a nitrogenic atmosphere, and Fabii is currently working with Agent Lundquist, mainly because Storm assisted recent fugitive here, Professor Charles Xavier. So Fabii walks in with these slugs, that's just what I'm gonna call him, right? And he says to Storm, he's like, you know, Aurora, Emperor Doom was highly invested in ensuring you face justice for your crimes. You would have thought I was royalty when I stepped into the courthouse. Every judge jumped through hoops to fetch me every paper I needed to put you behind bars. The most arrogant people in the world got me coffee as they issued warrants. We have sufficient evidence to suggest that you may have assisted the fugitive Charles Xavier in escaping off-world, and you have also confirmed that you are immune to telepathy. For the sake of the national security, I requested and have been provided with warrants to continue this interrogation with the use of Abakian lie detector, which I guess is what these nasty looking things are called. And then he continues on, he's like, I see you found yourself empathizing with the machine. I can assure you that the lie detector is no more alive than a bowl of Greek yogurt, which is a very interesting comparison, by the way. But then he continues on, it's like, it's a being that died centuries ago from a fungal infection. The fungal infection, through its dead host's neural network, detects your heart rate, blood pressure, cortisol levels, neurological activity, and all other psychological signals extra mundane beings like yourself show when you lie. The only living thing in here is an unfeeling parasite, and that's the cruel reality of our universe. With the parasite left unchecked, the host always dies. Which, of course, as we know, with Storm being the embodiment here, or the host of eternity, we know exactly what he's trying to say. So Homeboy pulls out some nitrogen here and then says, so let's begin. So the first question that he asks is, do you believe mutants are security risks to the United States of America? So she responds, no. And the machine says, true. Then, do you believe that you are a threat to this country? To which she says, no. And the machine confirms, true. So he continues, he's like, did you house Professor Charles Xavier knowing fully well that he was a wanted fugitive by the United States government? To which she says yes, which was also confirmed to be true. Did you also facilitate his escape from Grey Malkin prison? Where she says no, and that was confirmed to also be true. So he continues on, he's like, knowing the potential consequences of your actions on the well-being of our nation, the state of your government issued licenses and your freedom. If you could go back in time, would you still provide aid to the fugitive? To which she says yes, and that was confirmed to be true. But then in that moment here, there's some other agents on the outside that come to Lundquist, and that's when he says it's time, and you'll see what it's time for in a second. But as Fabii continues on, he says, are you aware that the mutant child who caused the deaths of 255 US citizens and $35 million worth of property damage in Oklahoma City is wanted by the United States government? To which she says yes, and that was confirmed to be true. So then the follow-up question is asked. It's like, where have you been hiding this mutant child? To which she responds, she's like, if I told you, Special Agent Fabii, the words would come from my mouth, but you would not hear them. No one would. And that was confirmed to be true. So he continues on. He's like, is that why you visited Haiti? To have Dr. Voodoo place a dark magical spell on your knowledge of the child's whereabouts? And she continues, she's like, as I have said previously, my actions outside the United States of America are none of your concern. And he's like, yo, listen, when they threaten this country, they are. So this is where he starts to turn the heat up just a little bit. And he's like, we've received readings of immense cosmic power from your sanctuary that you consistently fail to record in your reports to any of the government agencies. You allowed a dangerous fugitive mutant to escape arrest. Now you keep the location of an unstable Omega level mutant threat away from us. You seem to consistently choose the interests of powerful and dangerous mutants over the safety of this country and its citizens. So I ask again, Do you think you are a threat to the safety of the United States of America? And in this moment here, she says no, but then the machine says that was false. Now, meanwhile here, that agent that had just visited Lundquist, her name is Agent Etienne. So Agent Etienne here, she comes into Limbo and she starts to position America here as the greatest country on earth and claims how Limbo needs them, citing here that Ilyana Rasputin and Madeline Pryor, that their lack of existence here in Limbo and how they're currently right now in the US, that is where true greatness lies. But really the underlying message that she has here is this, is that they need them. They need the United States of America. And she begins to recite all these previous battles that their forefathers had. The one where their forefathers defeated the Asgardian rock trolls 4,000 years ago. The one where they made a Sidorak shudder. And then she shifts over to the current people in Limbo and is like, what battles have you won lately? And she mocks them, calling them a minor inconvenience to Spider-Man, and dares to reclaim their glory. But then the demon leaders, or one of the demon leaders here, the old guard, Zolel et Kolam. First and foremost, he's like, that's your offer? Greatness? And then he sets the record straight. He was like, I led the assault on the trolls. I made Sidorak bleed for killing my wife. My 10,000-year-old eyes have seen things your nightmares could not fathom. How old are you? And how old is your nation? What gives you the nerve to think that you can tell me of greatness? What do you know of it? So in this last attempt here, Agent Etienne begins to say, she's like, Ilyana Rasputin, she lays claim over Limbo because of her soul sword. Madeline Pryor does the same through the Sith of Sorrows. We have spent considerable resources to learn how to create these essence blades. We'll teach this skill to different rebel factions across Limbo, destabilizing its hierarchy. When its structure and governance are in ruins, it would be easy for an old guard like yourself to seize power. You don't want greatness? Then fine, we can give you power, lots of it. So in the aftermath of this here, she walks out of Limbo, rather injured, by the way, back into the United States. And this whole ploy that they were doing was just so that they could get the demons to go over to Storm's sanctuary, to completely decimate it, as it was a perfect opportunity because right now Storm is being distracted with Agent Phoebe. And the way that they see it is that Maggot is the only one, or the only heavy hitter that's currently at the sanctuary. But little did they know that Maggot was not alone. And when they portal over there, they are quite surprised to see that all the demons were already wiped out. So in that moment, She-Hulk asks Eden, aka Manifold, if she can portal them up there. And it's right in that moment when she comes out of that portal and she jumps after the agents and says, hi, my name is Jennifer Walters. I'm Storm's lawyer. It's nice to meet you. Now back here over at HQ, Eden had portaled Lundquist and his crew back into the meeting room here where Phoebe was interrogating Storm. And this is when Storm begins to say to Phoebe, she's like, I have a friend who is the best at card tricks. I've learned so much from watching him over the years. You ceaselessly display all these warrants for every single action you've taken against me. You make yourself appear like you would never do anything if it wasn't by the books. But you're worse than a criminal because you betray the trust your position earns you. All your theatrics just to hide the fact that you plan to raid my home without the legal backing to do so. You disgrace the power given to you. And it's in that moment when She-Hulk gets portaled in herself and says to Lundquist, she's like, my client will be leaving your custody now. If you have reservations, we'll settle them in court. But I have to warn you, I'm meaner in front of a jury. Now later on here, in the aftermath of all this, we see where Storm is currently talking to Eden. And Eden wants to know, he's like, is this thing that they're looking at, is that what they're after? But Storm lets him know, he's like, I'm afraid it's actually something much worse. She lets Eden know that something that's taken possession of her body, and basically how it makes her watch through her own eyes as it uses her body to commit atrocities, as she calls it. Attempts to resist it will hurt like my flesh has been set ablaze and my bones are filled with needles. But now it's worse. Hours from my day go unaccounted for. Sometimes I'm missing for days. Is my mind fracturing because of the weight of the parasitic entity? Or is its grip over me so strong now that it controls my body wholly whenever it so wishes. The last time I felt like this, somebody else deemed my body their possession against my will, was when I was but a child, alone with a man. I killed that man, Eden. That was the first life I ever took. It does not matter to me what this entity is or how powerful it is. I will kill it too. But at the same time, while she's talking, there's this narration that was going on at the same time that says, when we wage wars, we have our bombs and explosives, the war-ending kind, the opposition annihilators. Eternity, the physical embodiment of our universe, the entity that has made Storm's body its new home, has such a weapon too. With this weapon, Eternity intends to end his battle with Oblivion even before it begins. Behold the greatest weapon in the universe, Abraxas, the physical embodiment of destruction, the bomb entity. So it's right here where we get this flash forward, and here we see Abraxas right behind Eternity as Storm, or Storm as Eternity, you get the point. And the narration continues by saying, whenever Eternity requires an infinite escalation to his already infinite power, he uses the dreadful bomb entity, Abraxas, as a cosmic battery, a lesson he learned from watching Earth's power shifters through Storm's eyes. And it's here where we also get to see the Black Winter, and the Black Winter says, all these eons, Eternity, you finally grow a warrior's spirit. And then Eternity says, all these eons you mistook restraint for weakness, Black Winter. And in the body of Aurora Monroe, I am unbound, unchained, limitless. And for the first time in the billions of years that I have existed, my brother, Oblivion, will finally know the true meaning of fear. He and Hadad will know defeat by my hands. But then it's said right here, Eternity has never been more wrong. No matter how great the power he amasses, Oblivion will not know defeat by his hands. And that is when we pan over here to the Oblivion Void, as it says, for in the void, Hadad had already slain the great cosmic Leviathan, and our universe is next.
Now this all starts 4 days from now in the forest of Berkabis, right outside of Madripoor, where we get none other than Bishop, who's not looking so good. And he just releases a beam of energy right into the sky. But in current time, Storm, Maggot, and Manifold are in deep space. Storm says, the Avengers have recently encountered a new planet. This thing has been obstructing NASA's view of Planet Abak for remote scientific observation. Our job is to get rid of this obstruction. Japheth, I'm going to need you and your slugs to eat this entire creature. Manifold's like, it's the size of a tri-state area. How's Maggot gonna eat it all? And Maggot's still feeling this whole Omega thing with himself, because he's like, this is a discussion between two Omegas, Manifold. You just won't get it. It ain't your fault. But Manifold's like, apologies, my Lord Omega. Only a powerful man like yourself should have the honor of consuming this heaping mass of rotten kaju flesh. My lowly self would only be able to do something so uninteresting as teleporting it to the sun and incinerating it in an instant. But you deserve every bite. And Maggot's like, hey, Shuri. He looks like, huh? Where? Maggot's like, Storm, you didn't say Shuri was going to be here too. And I think this man is sitting here trying to spray like breath mints through the mask. And he's like, that's what I thought. Name drop Shuri and your steez immediately disappears. I know that look. Don't even think about it. Master Gateway said you're not allowed to teleport me into Eagle the Living Planet's butt crack anymore. And while these two were bickering, Storm's like, I am Storm, mistress of the cosmic elements. And Manifold says, we yelling out names and titles now? Like, I feel bad. Bro definitely is missing out. And Storm has to even crack a joke. She goes, Japheth is right. It's an Omega thing. You wouldn't get it. But then Storm's like, hey, Japheth, I ran lightning through the corpse to kill any possible pathogens. And then he goes, you don't have to explain yourself to me, Storm. As a fellow Omega, I already knew that. Manifold's like, this is going to be the longest 3 days of my life. So after 3 days of consuming this kaiju, we end up in Orun, realm of the Arusha. And I gotta say, these visuals are fire. But we get an image of a guy just sitting around looking at the sunrise. And a voice says, 3 wives, Sango. Yet, your mornings are as lonely and as depressing as a widow's bedside. And before we move on, I just think it's really cool how Marvel dug into this, because in Yoruba mythology, he really did have 3 wives. He was married to Oya, Oba, and Oshun. But anyway, we see this battle armor that we are so familiar with, and that electricity. And the voice says, "You slept with your eyes closed. I warned you not to." And as he calls for Ose Sengo, and in case you don't know, that's his axe, he says, the Earther, you have the self-assurance only the folly of youth can bring. Allow me to re-educate you. And Storm says, you came to my homeworld, Storm God. You conjured an anomaly that took the lives of my people. I have done neither you nor your people any harm, yet you attacked me like I was cheap game. To escape your grasp, I had to do the unthinkable. And I think we all know what she was going to say. You made me cut my hair. And if you don't think she looks badass, I don't know what is. He says lightning infused with solar radiation to keep me from escaping. I am not the storm god who retreats. I am not you, child. You learned the wrong lessons from our previous encounter if you think you can take me alone. And I just want to take a small second to backtrack a little bit because there's some dialogue that's happening that I really want to read to you guys. And it reads, Storm was not always the juggernaut that she is today. There were decades of her life when she did not possess her mutant abilities. To win battles, to win fights, she had to rely on skill and cunning. She trained her senses till her knuckles bled and her smarts till her nerves spasmed. She fought everything her world could throw at her to become Earth's mightiest mutant, the Omega of Omegas, the Omega Annihilator. And Storm says, you're terribly mistaken. I am not alone. And just then, a huge fist comes right through the building. We see Maggot in giant form outside and he says, I ate the absolute worst crap for 3 straight days to have the strength to enjoy this beep moment. So even when it looked like Storm took that mission in space to help out, she was already plotting this war. And as Maggot grabs Sango, there's some more dialogue. It says, thereafter, she simply had to step onto the battlefield and victory was assured. But her overwhelming power had grown to eclipse the baser strengths that once defined her. Storm is a master strategist. Then Maggot throws Sango, and the dialogue says, the only 2 mutant teleporters who can reach locations outside of our universe, Manifold and Gateway, have both made the Storm Sanctuary their new home, and their first duty was to help Storm reach a pocket dimension. And you can see Manifold open a gateway. And the dialogue reads, pocket dimensions, benign tumors of the universe where the laws of matter and energy clump together without any substance to act on but time and space. Unusual growths, realms never meant to exist, realms completely cut off from the main universe. Without a teleporter, there is no reaching them. Without a teleporter, there is no escaping them. These pocket dimensions have become Storm's personal prison cells for dangerous and powerful beings. And who do we see there? None other than Chalk, who we have not seen since issue 7 when they decided to jump Storm. And he says, the mutant child comes for us all. But as Storm and the team head home, she actually sees that beam of light that we seen at the beginning of this from Bishop, and she rushes to his side. And who's there? Well, it's Jaden. And just in case you guys don't remember who she is, she's the cause of all this starting. You know, with Storm catching the whole radiation poisoning and going to die, and you know, this whole mess is because of this mutant. So look, I'm not gonna go through the whole story of what she's saying, but long story short, she had a nightmare, and this nightmare made her powers activate. So Bishop had to take in all this energy, and that's what we seen him doing at the beginning, releasing this energy into the wild. But now, some bad people might know where they're at. So Storm's like, okay, not a problem. And look, Storm's doing her thing. She's calming her down, real soft, real gentle. Breathe, you're safe now. So she's like, I love what you did with your hair. And she responds, I tried to make it look like yours. And Storm says, it suits you well. You have owned the look. I am simply borrowing it now. Do not worry yourself. We will find another safe house too. And you're thinking, finally, this kid's catching a break. But then, bro, what? Maggot's head gets sliced right off, decapitated, like a horror movie. 1 second, everything's chill. The next second, blood is sprayed across both of their faces. No warning at all. Bishop's like, Storm, you can read energy signatures from miles away. Who's attacking us? Manifold's like, Storm, everyone, in here now. I'm getting us all out of here. Slice, body cut in half. And we see 3 dolls, which are kind of like, I guess, voodoo dolls. And someone says, Maggot and Manifold are down, sir. And who is it? None other than Agents Etienne and Fabier. And I might be pronouncing their names wrong, but cut me some slack because those names are gibberish. But Agent Fabier says, let's go for the trifecta. We can swoop in and take the child right after. She chose Matropole for a reason. No international body of note would question an act that takes place here. This is the only opportunity we will get to kill a god. Not even the open seas are as safe as Matropole. What happened here today will remain an unsolved mystery to the X-Men. The Avengers will be dumbfounded. So please, for the love of all that is holy, cut the damn voodoo doll and kill Storm. Now, I would like to add there are some dialogues that are going on in the background. So it says, there are many things that are worse than a god. Not because they have the power to kill one. No. Norrin Rad, the Silver Surfer suit, is one such being. You would rather face a god in close quarters combat than have him as an August visitor. Norrin Rad is a herald. When you see him, there is a world-ending behemoth coming behind. And we see Galactus hitting the ground hard in the same area as the agents. I mean, this looks like when Sakura yells, Naruto! And he just shows up to fight Pain. But anyway, just then, something rips a hole through reality. And it says, I am infinity, the unknowable expansion of all reality. The World Eater Galactus and his herald have given me no satisfying answer after I saved them from a black winter in a future time. Pummeling them bloody within an inch of their lives, they swayed not. But you, Aurora Monroe, would know. Where is my twin brother? What have you done to eternity? Now, when I say there is a council of weather gods that are getting together right now, I'm not exaggerating. I'm talking Susanoo, Amadioha, Sugar, Beta Ray Bill, Indra, Uko, Seth, Ligong, Mamaragan, and these are just some of the few of the gods that are here. And they're all here in front of the newly resurrected Zeus to discuss the fate of one mortal, Aurora Monroe, the mutant, the self-proclaimed storm god of Earth. And Zeus says, what is the verdict? Now, after the events that happened in the last issue, we kick off with Bishop like, look, I gotta go save the reformed World Eater from the US government. And he takes off into action. He says this'll only take a minute. And we see Galactus is surrounded by agents. And they got some sort of flying devices that look like mosquitoes, where you can see they're draining whatever this blood is from Galactus. And this is crazy right now. I don't think we've ever seen the big guy down like this. We even see Agent Etienne, and I might be saying her name wrong, but Agent Etienne's down too. No confirmation whether she's dead or not. But anyway, There's a monologue going on in the background, and it reads, "As a child, Aurora Monroe was expressive, mischievous even. She wore her heart on her sleeve. But as an adult, she is often stoic, seen as the epitome of self-control. The trauma of losing her parents did not staunch her fountain of feelings. No, none of her suffering and labors did. Everything changed when her mutant abilities manifested. On that day, our planet felt so small, so delicate, so fragile. Her whims could send the world over the edge of oblivion, to total annihilation. So she treads carefully, like a titan on a bridge of sawdust. She averts her access to some of her more terrifying powers. But as infinity stands before her, Storm unleashes all she has ever held back. The floodgates of self-control have been demolished, and fury crashes out. Tectonic plates grind against each other, tremoring the earth. With a deafening roar, Storm spews blue blazes, her wrath knowing no bounds. Suddenly, the infinite feels very finite. And there you have it, folks. Storm has unlocked yet another new form in which she says, "I am Aurora Monroe, descendant of Ashake. I share blood with Agamotto, the first sorcerer supreme. My roots run deep, far back to Ashtor, the elder god. All elements are mine to command. I am a goddess." And you can see Infinity is in a crouched position, feeling it from Storm. Storm continues, "Your brother Eternity possessed my body against my will, piloted me till I gave out, made me watch with my own eyes, while he decimated my loved ones with my abilities. He made me a pawn in his games, a student of his cruel, idiotic lessons. Tragedy and poverty shredded the clothes on my back into rags. Even then, I would not give in. On the streets of Cairo, when an empty belly pushed me to put aside the morals taught to me by my parents, I trekked back to my mother's village in Kenya, till my feet scabed over. I chose 2,000 miles of treacherous uncertainty rather than remain a pickpocket. I am not a goddess because I hold great power. I am a goddess because no one controls me." And my girl looks absolutely fire. She done tapped into the Sage of Six Path, I swear. But Infinity's like, separated from one another. Is this the ache death and oblivion have endured for all these eons? Without my brother, I can barely keep myself whole. If you have the power to end me, do it. Destruction would mean relief. And look who comes to Storm's side, Galactus, who says, "Nothing controls you now. Yet you have permitted your emotions to hold sway over you far more than any abstract entity is capable of." And we see Storm get emotional as Galactus brings Jaden to her. But we jump back to this council, where Zeus is like, enough. All those in favor of the council joining forces with Earth's Storm mutant to protect the universe. And we see one familiar hand go up. But then he asks, and all those in favor of the council joining forces with Hadad, the first, on his revenge quest against the universe. And we see multiple hands go up. And by the way, if anyone knows who this guy is on the left, rocking the blue, let me know in the comments because he looks friggin' awesome and I kinda wanna do some research on him. But anyway, Beta Ray Bill has had enough. He's like, madness. This is madness. Surely you have all gone insane. Or have the centuries of excess mead and wine finally taken their toll? And this guy's popping a bottle like, was that a direct shot at me? But anyway, he's like, Susanoo claimed his legendary blade, Kusanagi no Sugarugi, from the tail of the ferocious eight-headed serpent, Yamata no Orochi. Zeus felled the terrible Typhon, as Indra vanquished Vitra. They are not alone in this victory. Nizazi, Seth, Hino, and many of us have wrestled with Leviathans. The universe made them our mortal foes. Made storm guards like Shigar and Inkanyamba into dragons so we may better comprehend our enemies. Our purpose is to deliver the universe from the great cosmic Leviathan, Oblivion. Not ally ourselves with Hadad and drive all we hold dear back into the void. And other gods start to protest against Beta Ray Bill. They say, then why did eternity pass us over, only to handpick a mortal as their host, Beta Ray Bill? Why then did the universe choose a weak being as its champion? We exerted pressure and heat, hoping the carbon would harden into diamond. All she did was crumble like graphite. We will fight alongside Hadad, tear down this faulty universe, and from the ashes build a new one. One that is kind, one that is just, one that is ours. And Beta Ray Bill has had it at this point, because he says levitate, fly, catch. And he says, why don't I exert pressure and heat on your face, Sasunu, so you may have a taste of the fury you should expect from Asgardian steel and Uru metal if you continue down this path. How many beings derive joy and purpose from their existence? You would snuff them all out because that existence does not please you? And then he gives a weird look like, huh? What's that? And he says, Odin Swiffen. And Odin says, a black winter. And the dialogue reads, while the storm gods of our universe argued over which side of the Thunder War to join, the Black Winters make the choice for them. You can see one of the gods starting to decay, and another had to slice his arms off just to save him. And it continues, for in the Thunder War, there is only Hadad's side and the side of piled corpses. Hadad is no widowmaker. Hadad is no orphan maker. When Hadad steps into our universe, everyone dies. And that is a bad-ass picture. But as we jump back to Arkansas, we get a picture of something I don't think we ever thought we was gonna see. Cause we got big man Galactus and Silver Surfer peacefully just chilling outside of a hospital, waiting for Storm as she's inside right now. And unfortunately, it looks like our man Maggot, Mega Maggot, is really dead. But it looks like they're working on Manifold. And Storm says, I'm sorry, Gateway. If I had been more earnest in my studies with Dr. Voodoo, I would have been able to protect Japheth and Eden from the mystical attack. If I had accepted help from those who offered, none of this would have happened. I was just so angry. I didn't want help from anyone who could stop me from taking my revenge the way I wanted to. But the universe is cruel. It was others who paid for my errors. So I am sorry for the pain my actions have caused you. I am sorry for the irrevocable consequences my deeds have had on our loved ones. And Gateway says, the present shapes the future, as much as the past shaped the present. Shape a better future, Aurora Monroe. Shape a better universe. And I do not know exactly what he did to her, but we jump to a few other places where Storm may be building a team bigger than she even knows. Because right now, the one above all has gone to see his father, and he states, I have come to bargain for the fate of the universe, Father. In the fight in the Black Winter, even the Phoenix has joined the fight. We have Wanda fighting, and that's not all. As the Silver Surfer says, Galactus and I will help Infinity and her avatar Quasar repel the Black Winters for as long as we can. And Galactus says, while you summon all the courage and strength that you can muster to face the storm god Hadad alone. And just like that, Storm isn't just flexing lightning bolts no more. Now look, this all starts off with a frog and a hand coming out of the frog. And it's none other than Dr. Voodoo. And man, he is welcomed by none other than Gore the God Butcher, Sentry, and Philavel. And if this doesn't remind you of Naruto when Jiraiya snuck in to the village hidden in the rain to fight Pain and the Akatsuki, I mean, I don't know what else does. But Dr. Voodoo says, Gore the God Butcher. And he responds, Jericho Drum, the Gunner of Gods. You seek to aid your storm god in her battle against Hadad. Unfortunately for her, death calls for you. And we start seeing images of all these different cities. And I'm not going to read all the notes that are here, but I just want to say, in Impossible City, I thought it was funny that Tony left a note for Storm that says your boyfriend, and he crossed it out. Ex-husband, crossed it out. Teammate ran into some trouble. Like, bro, he stayed doing the most. But we get to see how the storm is looking in Atlanta and the storm sanctuary, and even in Alaska and Louisiana. And the weather is clearly freakish. But what's causing all this? Well, the Battle of Two Gods, which started 30 minutes ago, where Storm is in space and she goes, Hadad. And he responds, Host of Eternity, I am not a violent god. Or at least that's how he started. Because right now, man, he done punched Storm so hard that her lower jaw is going the opposite direction from the rest of her body. And he's like, these hands have worked so many wonders. They performed miracles. Today, you will die by them. And he sends her flying with a punch. He says, my desires are many. Watching you die like an animal, not knowing why you are being put down, is not one of them. And he puts his hand out to summon his weapon. And you can see Storm's outfit is shattered and she's puking up blood. And he continues, the entities love to hear themselves speak. They make grand pronouncements about what is required of their subjects. But the misdeeds of abstracts are the most well-kept secrets in the cosmos. They have told you nothing about why I seek to end everything. They have told you nothing about why you and your planet must die. And at this time, he catches his weapon and he sends it flying. Storm says, I understand the unfair, painful weights you must have been forced to shoulder. I understand that we take different paths in the face of unforgivable injustice. But if you attempt to break my planet, hurt my people, in your vengeful quest, an immortal shall meet its swift end. And we see Storm gets pierced right through her left shoulder. And then Hadad lifts the weapon up by telling it to levitate while it's still in Storm. And he says, Are you crying? You have not awakened your boundless eyes, have you? You have not looked through time to learn of the host before you. You know nothing of internal madness, the insane. Eternal Hadad, the devastator. As it stands, you barely know Eternal Storm, the turbulent. With the powers you struggle to wield, I dominated the primordial abstract entities, drained the living tribunal, and used their powers to wage a war against the one above all. Of all the beings that I have encountered in battle, the only reason you will be remembered is because of how incredibly weak you are. You were forged in a desert. Good. I will unmake you in this one. And boy, his aura farming is crazy. But at the same time, right now at the House of Ideas, Eternity has went to see the one above all. The one above all says, sometimes I wish I created my children to require substance like you did with your humans. I would have more to offer you than my undivided attention when you come to visit. My mind would be at rest knowing that you would leave with more than a mere memory of my company, but a physical rejuvenation too. You were always the superior creator, Eternity. And he responds, I would not dare say the one above all is wrong, but you always give me this undeserved praise. Hadad has reached Earth, Father. He will find my heart within the planet, end me, and I will cease to exist. What sort of better creator dreads his own creation so? And the one above all says, all great creators fear the power of their creations. You make beings that can surpass you in strength and wisdom. Some of your creations have even found their way to converse with me. You have made me proud. Eternity says, if I truly am what you say, then the glory is all yours. You made me. The creator of the greatest creator is the greatest creator. And I think at this point, the one above all noticed the little brown nosing because he's like, what do you want, Eternity? And he says, for you to stop Hadad before he destroys me and my sister Infinity, before he destroys the universe. And he drops to his knees. The one above all says, I have come to bargain for the fate of the universe, Father. Those were your words when you barged into my abode to interrupt my work. What have you brought to bargain with? What precious possessions do you own that my desire would be to separate from it? What sacred sacrifice will wash away your atrocity? You caused the slaughter of oblivion, my first son, the void from which everything came? What makes you so deserving of the slightest speck of my compassion? Eternity says, I am your son too. And the one above all turns with a look of disgust and says, I am the joy of new birth, the love that makes a being sacrifice its life for another, the hope for a better tomorrow in the face of tribulations. I am the godness and mercy you hope to find here. But I am also the wrath, justice, retribution, vengeance. After countless eons of protecting you from black winters, Eternity interrupts. Oblivion only did so because his twin, Death, was housed within me. And the one above all says, he had nothing, not his twin, not a glimmer of your grace, never your empathy. All he ever had was duty. But the moment he stepped outside of your eternal expectations, when he left you to fend for yourself, you unleashed your son, Abraxas, the bomb entity, to end oblivion before your next trial by combat with him. You disobeyed me. And Eternity says, and he released the storm god you imprisoned within him to get back at me. The storm god who murdered him and comes for me. Must I die too before you act? The one above all responds, act? I am the uncreated creator, Lord of the universe. I sit in the house of ideas and see into the far shore. All that is because I will it. I am the one above all. What crisis do you think will befall all of the existence should I let loose the anti-creation inferno that is my fury? What calamity shall bombard all that is ever will be should I surrender to the titanic abyss of my despair? My son is gone. I cannot mourn. Order and chaos understood each other's roles and found balance. Within you, death and life reached a compromise. But you and your brother only desired to end each other. Hadad will grant both your wishes. And at this time, if you don't know who this black figure is that has risen above Hadad, well, they're gonna tell you. Because it says, you have been defeated by Hadad, the first storm god, the indiscriminate devastator. I am the Black Winter, who will devour this universe. Know me. Know your ender. Just then, the Black Winter's hit, and Hadad turns and says, Asgardian? And then we see, let your rage fuel your flames, brother. Let the tyrant fall before the serpent storm god. Let the villain's obliteration make all tremble at the might of Beta Ray Bill and Sugar. And we can't say this flame didn't do anything, because Hadad says, your flames destroyed my thunder spear. No matter. I will fashion your bones into a new one when I'm through with you. And bro, this man kicked the heck out of Beta Ray Bill. I mean, he kicked this man so hard, it started dialogue. It says, 3 billion years ago, Oblivion slew Eternal Madness the Insane, the 13th host of Eternity, in a trial by combat. Eternity determined to henceforth never lose to Oblivion, created the Elder Gods. But the Elder Gods were not his masterpiece. His magnum opus was Hadad, the first storm god. And all storm gods can trace their lineage far back to a single Elder God, Gaia. All except one, Aurora Monroe, blood of the Elder God Ashta. Those ignorant of her nature called her the storm god who retreats. But we know the terrifying truth of who she is. Hadariel, mistress of elements, God Eater, the Omega of Omegas, the indomitable storm. And she'll die to protect her homeworld, her universe. And I gotta say, that picture is fire of her and Hadad going at it. But back at the House of Ideas, the one above all is not done with eternity. He says, our creations can seem so vastly dissimilar, but our experiences as creators can be all too familiar. It is easy to be a tortured artist, son, to doubt your work, to hate what your craft says about what kind of individual you must be. The fear and hate you have for Hadad is immeasurable. You sense his approach and see a reflection of everything you despise about yourself. If only you had an equal amount of respect and trust for your creation who bleeds to preserve your life, despite your cruelty. To look upon her face and see everything endearing about you. You can never defeat oblivion. Yet, a being you crafted achieved the impossible. A word of advice from this creator: love your creation, as I love you dearly. And as Storm and Hadad are still going at it, we get an image of Galactus in the Silver Surfer trying to save some of the Storm Guards who have not been taken over by the Black Winter. And we also see Infinity and Quasar fighting it out too, where she says, "My brother is back, Quasar. His presence warms my heart once more." And just then, Eternity speaks to Storm. He says, "Imagine it, Earther, your father, who has always been your solid foundation, the most unbending man you have ever known, a true fighter. Imagine walking into his abode, in the shadows of the quiet place, with sorrow pouring down his face, and you realize the reason why he feels so much pain in his heart is you. I am the son who broke his father's heart. I have no honor, in my father's eyes nor in yours. Aurora Monroe, all I have done has been for my sake, never considering the weight of my actions on you, your desires, your will, your autonomy. For this, I ask for your forgiveness." And Storm says, "There are many words I want to share with you, Eternity, but all I can give you at the moment are the feelings that rush through my heart. Feelings of having to defend a universe that has been cruel to me, and a warning. My body must always belong to my will alone." And he agrees. And with the words of the one above all echoing in his mind, Eternity returns to Storm's body. In the speed of thought, Storm's and Eternity's consciousness, powers, and identities merge into the supercosmic being known as the Eternal Storm, demanding and giving the other forgiveness, understanding, and grace. Eternity submits his will in this form to the control of our hero, our universe's deadliest warrior. Eternity warns her, Hadad will begin to loosen his grasp on our neighboring realms to become far too powerful for you to fight alone. But we have a treaty. Affinity, the Never Queen, and the Phoenix Force will converge here to join the battle. All you must do is stall till they arrive. And Storm says, "There is no need to put our sisters in harm's way. I am ending this battle now." And she takes off. Now, I'm telling you, I'm going to do my best to say these words, but I might mess up. I'm letting you know now. But anyway, Storm says, Muay Thai and Gadibbo by Black Panther, Kanjutsu and Krav Maga by Wolverine, Tai Chi and Hungar by Shang-Chi. These are some of the many martial disciplines that I have mastered in recent years. But when it comes to fighting bastards like you, I rely on the uneducated wailing of the urchin boys of my childhood. I am Aurora Monroe, Storm God of Earth. Strike my planet, and I'll be the thunder that follows. And Hadad's all types of messed up. He's like, look into your shattered memory with Eternity. See what Eternity did to me, what the one above all allowed him to do to me. See if you would not want to end them all. And she responds, you aim to kill me and destroy my planet. Even then, I do not intend to end you. I will imprison you in a pocket dimension like all thunder gods before you, who threatened me in my home. And just then, my man Hadad broke the fourth wall. He says, our lives are just parchments, comical books and their endless libraries. Our sufferings and tribulations are mere amusements for them to marvel at. We are pawns in the hands of the creators. We have to seize our destinies, or else. But Eternity, dreading the future consequences of Storm's mercy, betrays her trust. See, Eternity forcibly subjects Storm's body and slays Hadad in cold blood. In a fit of fury, Storm reaches within every fiber of her being and rejects the treacherous abstract entity from her very soul. Never again will Storm trust our universe. But I don't know if that was a good idea, getting rid of Eternity that soon. Because in the Royal Palace, Realm of Death, there's mayhem going on. Someone says, I have allowed myself to remain imprisoned, finding only small pleasures in the craft of my adversaries. I have stayed confined because I deemed my judge just and my jailers justified. My brother, Oblivion, has been felled by a creation of Eternity. Yet the living tribunal has dealt no punishment. The one above all, aloft. And we see none other than Death and Dr. Voodoo. And she continues, that is why I have summoned you here, Necromancer. You will be my executioner's blade, my avatar, the avatar of death, as we wage war on all those responsible for taking my brother from me. You will be my battle general in the crusade to come, in the war above all. And there we have it, folks. Storm takes down Hadad, the first storm god. Honestly, for all the hype around him, I feel like the fight didn't give us quite enough. But that's just me. What does have me excited is knowing Phoenix and Scarlet Witch are lined up to help, which could set up for a wild truce down the line. But real talk, I think I'm even more hype about Marvel Zombies popping up. I'm amped to see Null, because let's be real, we need way more of him. And is that Spider-Man they teased? If Marvel tries to tie this to the 8 deaths, we are going to have to talk about it. Oh, and those shadowy claws? Please let it be Dakin. But hey, that's just my take. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you've been rocking with these breakdowns, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hype this video using YouTube's new hype feature. It really helps push our content to more comic fans just like you. And as always, thanks for kicking it with Keeping It Comic. I'll catch y'all on the next one.